Hey guys, so thought I'd take a little bit outside this week, but I want to encourage you all since we can't be together. Hopefully, pretty soon we will be. Uh, Continue to stay safe. I know that restrictions are starting to get a little bit looser, and so even with that, enjoy getting to see your friends, but be smart. And so tonight, I've just got a passage I'll read for you. Hopefully, you can read along. When we get there, when we get to reading it, it's in Matthew chapter 14. We start verse 22. So you're able to, if you have a Bible anywhere near you, you can pause this video. You can go get your Bible, flip to Matthew chapter 14, verse 22. So we'll read there. I'll read there in just a minute, but to kind of preface this, why it got me thinking of this story specifically to share with you. I was watching a movie the other night. There's not a lot to do, but getting to watch some movies is one of my favorite things to do. And there's a great movie that came out not too long ago, last year, maybe the year before last, called Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I know not everyone's a superhero fan, but this is it was an animated movie, all about all these different versions of Spider-Man coming together. And the story focused on a younger guy named Miles Morales, a high schooler. And long story short, it goes all the way to this one moment in the movie where, if you haven't seen it, hopefully you don't you're not that interested in spoiling it. It's a little bit older, but everyone's about to mount up to head off and try to stop the impending evil that's about to happen. And Miles has basically one last test. He has powers, he has his way to fight, but he has no control over it. So the Spider-Man we all know, the Spider-Man we're all a little bit more familiar with, stops him, and he kind of holds him tight, and he tells him, "I need you to use your powers now. I need you to basically use him against me. Get free." And he's unable to do it. He tries so hard, but he can't. Finally, Spider-Man ties him up so he won't stop him from leaving or try to follow him. And as Spider-Man's leaving, Miles asks him, he says, "How will I know when I'm ready?" Spider-Man just turns and says, You won't know when you're ready." He says, "All it is a leap of faith." He said, "That's when you know you'll be ready, is when you take that leap of faith." That story reminded me a lot of what happens here. Because Miles eventually does. He takes that leap of faith, and he comes to the point where he's able to finally become the person, the hero that he's meant to be. But here, we see Peter. Peter gets a lot of flack for a lot of the stuff he does. But of course, Peter also does some amazing things. And in the story, Peter steps out on faith. He takes a leap of faith. Not a literal leap, but but he does. So hopefully you're with me. If not, just try to listen and follow along. It's Matthew chapter 14, starting at verse 22. It says, immediately it's talking about Jesus. It says, immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. Because up to this point, Jesus has been teaching crowds of people. You've got on the side of the sea, on this beach, he's teaching a ton of people, thousands. Finally, he says, disciples, I need you to get into this boat and go across. I'll meet you on the other side, basically. It says, after dismissing the crowds, he went up onto the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat was already about a mile from land, battered by the wind because the wind was against them. So we see at this point, not only are they on the boat out on the water about a mile from land, the storm is just raging through. It says that it's battered. You know, ships in these times, you know, they're built to withstand storms, but our ships, if we try to think of a ship, we're most likely thinking of our ships, when in reality these ships are not as strong. They're battered by the wind. The storm is just raging. Then we get into this time. It says, then around 3 a.m, he came to them walking on the sea. Jesus is walking on water. This is this story. He's walking on water. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. And immediately Jesus spoke to them. "Have courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." Peter speaks up. He says, "Lord, if it's truly you, command me to come out to you on the water." Jesus simply replies, "Come." It says, and climbing out of the boat, Peter started walking on water and came toward Jesus. When we get to verse 30, he says, but when he saw the strength of the wind, he was afraid and began to sink as he cried out, "Lord, save me!" And immediately Jesus reached out his hand, caught hold of him, and said to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got in the boat, the wind ceased. Then those in the boat worshipped him and said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." It's an amazing story. This storm just crashing into this boat on the sea. The disciples probably just holding tight. Jesus walks out on the water. They, of course, become afraid. But Peter starts to realize, he says, "If it's truly you, Jesus, command me to come out on the water towards you." I know a lot of times when this story is being drawn in pictures, it's flat water. We think of Jesus walking and the water is just still. But this, we're talking about a storm on a sea. Water is raging. Water's rising up, just ebbing and flowing. The wind blowing. Peter takes a leap of faith. He says, when Jesus says, "Come," he steps out onto the water. And it says he walks on the water towards Jesus. Now we see that this doesn't last so long. Peter's not just continually staying in the water, but we see why. As he's walking, eyes towards Jesus, his eyes starts diverting, looking at the storm, the wind that's pounding into him. He starts getting scared, starts sinking. Of course, Jesus saves him. Peter, we might be able to look down and be like, "Peter, why did you take your eyes off of Jesus? Why did you stop having faith?" Which is one of the lessons that we need to learn, is that we need to continually have faith. But notice, Peter got out on the water. Peter walked on water. The 11 others stayed in the boat. There's a few things, just a few words of encouragement and maybe a little bit of a lesson here is we don't need to be the disciples, the 11 others. When Jesus calls us, which is always, take that leap of faith. Take that step out onto the water, the raging water. But in reality, we also don't need to be Peter. Because Peter, although he took the leap of faith, taking the leap of faith is just the first step. What we need to do is to continually focus on Jesus. Don't look at the storm, this pandemic. We could easily take our eyes off of Jesus. If we get so focused on the things around us that we stop focusing on God, we're going to start sinking. If we start paying more attention to our interest, I know in the past we've talked about that certain things aren't bad. The internet, phones, all these things are not bad things. But when they start distracting us from Jesus, that is when they become bad for us. We can't let social media, the internet, anything, we can't be distracted. We need to continually focus on God and have faith in Him. We're constantly attacked by things that we can't see. We're constantly attacked by events. We lose loved ones. We don't get to finish out our senior year. All of these different things can easily, if we allow them to, turn our eyes from Jesus. But take that leap of faith and continue to look towards Jesus. So that's all I have for you this week. Hopefully we'll have some announcements in the coming weeks. If you're wondering about this, don't really have an answer for you, but have a great week, y'all. If you have any questions about anything, about things that you might want to learn more about, you don't really know much about, if you want to talk about saying you feel God's calling you to something, or you feel like something's happening in your life, but you don't really know how to explain it, send me a text, call me. I will drop just about everything to talk, because I care about you guys and I miss you. So have a great week. Shoot me a text, let me know how you're doing, and hopefully we can see each other again.